Welcome to the Welcome Back celebration for Israel Reflections from our fellow students. And there's the 6 that will start. I want to acknowledge our board members here tonight. Chaya Friedman, Marilyn Goldstein, Sam Scott, Michelle, Nan Rosenthal, Nolly Wood, Rosalie Alter. Rosalie was able to host our fellows in Israel. And our former director, Dina Frank, is here. So thank you all. I also want to thank the parents. The parents, I know this was a difficult decision for you to send your children to Israel. And we can only say that the results were good. They're back, they're safe, and they had the experience of their life. And so thank you for trusting us and the Ecyp program. We knew it would be a great experience for them, and I hope you think it was as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Kathleen, who will introduce our speakers. And this is my favorite program because I've been to Israel. It had a profound impact on me, and I know it's had a profound impact on all of the fellows, and I can't wait to hear what they have to say. Thanks.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Kathleen, the Ecyp director. I have my notes, I have my script, but I'm actually going to put it away, mainly because I've asked the same of our students not to have notes or scripts tonight. And I'll go through a little bit about what they're doing, but I think it's only fair if I ask them to do something, I should model it. So I'm really proud of our 12 fellows. They just came back from a really special, transformative journey to Israel. For some of them, it was the first time they got on a plane. For many of them, it was the first time they left the country. And before they left, and we went through Israel prep sessions, asked them to really think about, as Ecyp fellows, our mission is really to build the bonds between the African American and Jewish communities here in Baltimore. And then what does that mean when you're in Israel? What does it mean to be African American in Israel? How are you going to build relationships with 12 other Israeli youth that you'll spend your summer with? We went through a lot of that reflection. And I also really asked of them to take the time to build relationships with each other, that they were going to become each other's families, that they had to make sure that they were looking out for one another. I called it passport buddies when I waved to them at Newark Airport. I felt like a parent. I don't have a kid right now, but watching 12 kids get on the plane and then knowing that the parents who, thank you for entrusting Ecyp for this experience, that I needed to let them know that they're okay. And I also thank Gabby, who texted me right away, right when they got off the plane, so that I could know that, yes, they've made it. But they went through such a special journey with one another. Even though they had individual moments, they also had a moment as a group that they will only share with one another. I also asked them to build relationships with new young people that they will meet, also to build relationships with the staff, the people that they were going to interact with during this 3.5 weeks. And that was really important. And then to be ambassadors of Ecyp, to be ambassadors of young people of Baltimore, but also you're kind of ambassadors for what some people see as American young people. So it's a lot on your shoulders, but they did it. So tonight, I have asked them to tell their story. This has been difficult, challenging. They wanted a piece of paper. Miss Kathleen can have a note card, something. But last Monday, we worked with Laura Wexler, who does Stoop Storytelling here in the city. The mission of Stoop Storytelling is everyone has a story. What's yours? And to really be brought in to the experience, we want to do that through storytelling. So they're going to tell you their story. I asked them, what was the most memorable experience? How can you bring us into that? And hopefully we'll walk away with, okay, that was really important to the fellow that's standing up in this room. I also wanted to make sure that they are doing it from their heart. Storytelling allows them to be their most authentic self. So I'm very excited for you to hear the 12 stories this evening. I'm going to start with Miss Afia, and we are going to hear some stories.
Hi, everyone. So, since I'm the first fellow speaking, I'd like to thank everyone, Elijah Cummings, Miss Kathleen, all the board members, and even though they're not here, Gal, Danielle, Shirel, Shlomo, and Elon, and all the parents for letting us go to Israel, and that's on behalf of all of us. So, I'm Afia, and even before we got to Israel, when we were just having our little moments, all of the ECYP alumni and all the board members were telling us how beautiful Israel was, and oh, it'll just hit you, it's just an amazing place. And they made it seem like heaven on earth. So I was ready. I was so ready. We were all like, okay, yeah, I can't wait. I was counting down the days, the seconds, the minutes. And finally, we get there and we get off the airplane, and we're in the airport, and I'm looking around like, okay, it's a normal airport. And then before we leave the airport, the heat hits me, and I'm like, okay, I'm ready for this moment. And it was supposed to be this movie moment, when the camera pans in and you have this tiny epiphany, oh my God, I was ready for it. So the heat hits me, and I'm like, okay, this is the moment. And I'm exiting the airport, and still, no. So I'm like, okay, cool, it's fine. When I get to Yemen Ord, which is the boarding school that we were staying at, that's when I'm finally gonna have my moment. And we're driving down this road, and it's so beautiful, and on either side of the street, there are these giant bushes filled with colorful flowers, and it was just prepping me. I was like, okay, I'm ready now. I'm gonna have this moment as soon as I step off the bus. And when I stepped off the bus in Yemen Ord, it just didn't happen. And I was like, okay, it's fine. I have 3.5 weeks, I'll get to it. So every day we're going someplace new, and it's all beautiful, but it's not happening. And I got disappointed, and I told my friends, I was like, okay, fine, whatever. I'm just not gonna have my moment until I get on the plane and I'm realizing that I'm finally leaving Israel. It's whatever. And then we got off the bus, and it's really hot this day. It's humid. There's no wind. And we're going up this hill, and you go up hills a lot in Israel. And you're going up this hill, and we finally get to the top of the hill, and our tour guide, Elon, he tells everybody to be quiet. So we all listen to him, and we be quiet. And he holds up his fingers and counts 1, 2, and then at the end of 3, we hear this noise off in the distance, and we're all looking around what just happened? And he's like, so we're at the border of Israel. Over there is the UN base, and in the distance is the border of Syria. You just heard bombs dropping in the civil war. And that's when I had my moment. And I mean, it wasn't what I expected, because right over there was a smoothie place, there was a pizza place. This was the reality of Israel. I can be perfectly safe. I was safe. No bomb was going to ever hit me when I was there. I could go get a smoothie and listen to people dying. I could listen to houses being blown apart. I can listen to people crying, and I couldn't do anything, and I couldn't help. But I was it was right next door, and I couldn't do anything. So that was my movie moment. But what I took away from the experience is we really, someone has to help, someone has to do this. And I think it's the 12 of us and the board members and our parents and everyone coming together just to help anybody in need, and help anybody that has bombs dropping on their house or near them, and anybody that can hear the bombs dropping, and anybody crying about it. We can all help them. So thank you.
All right, so wait, I'm Chris, and before I start my story, I wanted to let everybody know that I'm not really a sentimental person. so I don't want like my story to like hit too hard or anything like that, because that's just not me. But all right, so before our trip to Israel, I want to say that I looked at a lot of different fellows, and I saw that they were like really optimistic about going on a trip and was looking forward to it, and I just couldn't see that in myself. So I saw a big change once I left Israel. In particular, one event helped me change, and I say that was a visit to Ashkelon. And when we visited, we stayed at I say like a stay home, and it was with families. And so me and my fellow Eric, we stayed with a family of 4, and they had various pets. So it was cats and dogs and about 30 rabbits, and like the occasional mice, like they come through too. So yeah, it was just a house full of animals and stuff. And I was still in my pessimistic mood about the trip as whole. So I didn't really I saw things in a materialistic way, and I saw that everyone else's homes, like they were living like luxurious suburbs and stuff, and we were like staying not a bad home, but it was just like it was just a home, and it was regular. So when I viewed it that way, my trip wasn't going too good for me, and I don't think I was getting the most out of the experience. And so it was a time that in our stay with the people, we went to the beach, and in the family there was a mom, a dad, and then there was 2 sons. One name was Bear and one name was Matar. One was about 17, one was about 10, and Matar was 10. And I think I shared a special connection with him that helped me better myself as a person and helped me gain a good experience on the trip. And it was when we were at the beach, and so Matar is about yay high, and his hair makes him deceiving. He kind of looks like a girl because it goes down his back. So we were in the water, and everyone was just in the water, and it was like high waves. So they were coming and crashing, and I wouldn't go under, but I would see him like going under, and he was like drowning. And so I didn't want to react too fast, but cause I thought he could swim. But at one point it was like a huge wave, and it crashed, and I saw him go under, and it looked like he was struggling. So I swam over to save him, and I think this is where like it might get sentimental. I kind of picked him up out of the water and looked him in his eyes, and I don't really share like too many situations like that with many people at all. But I looked him in his eyes, and Matar couldn't really speak English, so we didn't share our connection with any words. But I felt that it was just I don't know, like maybe we're like mutants and we have powers so we can feel what other people feel. But when I looked in his eyes, I felt like I wanted to protect him, and I felt like I was his safety, and that really helped my experience out in Israel, because I see the relations between the two places where I live, Baltimore and in Israel, and it just expands to our nation versus with their nation, and how we should always protect them. And that just helped my experience a lot in Israel, because it wasn't really going good for me on the inside. Like I didn't take the experience as good as well as I should have until that moment, and that just turned my whole like personality around about Israel. It made me take like a 180, and so it just made my experience really good, and I'm happy that I visited.
Sorry. Hi, my name is Carly. So before going to Israel, I knew that my name meant 2 things, and that's womanly and strength. And that was important to me, but it wasn't like identifying for me. But in Israel, we came to find out that names are a really big deal in Israel. They mean a lot. For example, our tour guide, his name was Elon, and apparently the way his name is spelled signifies that his name means big, great oak, or something like that, like tree. And I saw that in his mannerisms, because no matter where we went, he was very strong and independent, and he guided us everywhere we went, and it just reminded me of a tree for some reason. I don't know why, but it did. And so I wanted to try to figure out what the different words of my name, what they meant, and I wanted them to identify me more, because I now look at myself as an Israeli, no offense, but I do. And so on our first hike, I was like, I can't do this, because I'm not really a nature girl, and I had to do it because all we did was mandatory. So I decided to just go through everything and just promise myself to live fearlessly and do every experience that was given to me, because you don't always get to go to Israel for free. And so on our first hike, I had this voice in the back of my head saying things like, oh my gosh, keep looking down, don't trip, ew, there's bugs everywhere. But there was a louder voice that I was hearing, and it was saying, look how gorgeous these trees are, and listen to all your friends having fun. You should be having fun too. And either it was a voice in my head or it was Gal, our director, and he was always with me and always talking all the time, so it could have been him. But anyway, so we made it through that 2-hour hike, and it was hard, but we made it. And I remember the whole time I kept telling myself, like, keep going, because the next hike will be easier and you'll get through it and you'll enjoy it. And the next day, after camping in the woods, I did get through it, and it was a workout the next hike, but I still made it through, and I realized, like, wow, that got a little easier. And so as the trip progressed, we were doing more walking, and I was just accustomed to walking everywhere, because in Israel, you're always outside. You're rarely indoors because it's just so gorgeous and sunny and happy everywhere, so you don't want to be indoors. And so after about the majority of the trip, I was used to walking everywhere. And for our last hike, we hiked this mountain called Mount Masada, and it was gorgeous, but that day I was just not feeling it. And it was because we woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I had about 3 hours of sleep. I had a migraine. It was already getting hot, and I was used to the heat because, you know, in Israel it's hot all the time. But I don't know, that day I just didn't feel good. But I told myself, don't let that voice in the back of your head come back. Like, you've already enjoyed all of your trip. Why let that voice get any louder? And so as we're climbing up the mountain, the sun hadn't risen yet because we were getting to the top of the mountain to see the sunrise. But I could see in the distance, like, really gorgeous brown and orange and burgundy layers and everything. And it was the mountains around us. And I was just saying to myself, look what God has done for you. And in my head, I was like, that voice in the back of your head, you can't let that come out, whether you're here or back in America, because your name means strength, and you're showing that you have all this strength. And when we got to the top, we found a place to rest so we could see the sunrise. And I just sat there and reflected on those two words, womanly and strength. And womanly, I show that all the time already. But strength, I was just so surprised because I had become so strong. And it wasn't just physical strength to walk everywhere, because, I mean, I told you all, like, I was accustomed to that by now. But it was emotional strength to just push myself through anything. Because sometimes you just let that voice grow louder and you just, you know, give up. But when you push yourself through things, and when your name becomes important to you, with my meaning strength, I guess, I follow that promise to myself, and I make sure I remember that all the time. So when I got back to America, I was able to say, hi, my name is Carly, and remember that my name has those two meanings. And now, I don't know, I just feel so much better now. So yeah, that's all.
How is everyone's evening going? Okay. My name is Troy. You all know that. No introduction needed. Israel was a very, how should I put this, a very strange experience for me. Most of the stuff that everybody else say they didn't like didn't really affect me that much. Like the heat, I got used to it. I knew I was going to have to deal with it, so I didn't try to like hide or cower away from it. The hike, man, that first one was ridiculous. Like 2 hours, I was sweating my butt off. My bottle was empty. Then we was at a campsite and we slept, but we were not able to take showers. So through the grit and the grime, I did a hike again to get back to the village. I didn't really enjoy that very much, and I had twisted my ankle, but I kept going. I'm gonna just start off saying this. That was my version of an introduction. What really made the experience enjoyable for me was the people, or in specific, two dudes. One was named Yanni, and he was very skinny, like skinny. Like, I thought there was something wrong with him when I first met him. I was kind of creeped out by him. He was like a scarecrow. I was like, who is that? And, man, having a brain freeze right now. But Yanni and a lot of other Israelis like made the experience enjoyable for me because they made me feel comfortable, and they were vulnerable. In Baltimore, the expectation for me is that it's not always easy to get to know people and get under their shell. It seems like it's a bit of difficulty. With the Israelis, it wasn't, though. When you're used to punching through bricks, when you punch through sand, it's so soft and easy to get through. And that's how it was with them. I was surprised, and it opened me up more because I'm open, but I'm also defensive because I need to protect myself. So when I met them, I asked them about their origin, where they came from, Ethiopia, how many brothers and sisters they have, did they live in a house with their father and their mother, and they didn't speak English that well, but they told me, and it's like, wow, you stand in a place, the boarding school you were staying at, and you get to know these people, you sleeping with them every night, you smuggling pizza because that was real nice. I mean, you get to bond with people because you're around them 24/7, and we was going through hikes and trips around the city, and we all could relate. You might not be able to speak the same language, but you can see when somebody getting tired and they want to sit down. The guy Gall, he had these water jerry cans, that's what he called them. He pissed me off every day with those things. Like, 'cause I don't know if it's because he knew I wouldn't say no, or because I always would like pick him up by default. He like, yeah, you carry jerry can. I'm like, yo, every day with this. Like, I'm gonna give a shout out to Cam and Chris, cause like I always seen them drinking the jerry cans, but I'm gonna kind of take that shout out back because they was the only ones drinking out of them, so they should have held it. But yeah, like the guy Gall and the Israelis overall just made my experience, how should I put this, fulfilling. Like my phone had stopped working. I was done. I was in a stupor of anger. Like I was pissed off. Like Eric knows, in the dorm, if I was not laying down with my arm over my head, I was listening to music all the time. He knows my favorite songs now. David knows my favorite songs now. Like, it's like I use methods and stuff to cope with not being home. Like when you're not able to take a shower without shoes on and be able to lay in your bed without worrying about ants crawling through the window that we having to exterminating. That's how I would say it. It was a lot to deal with, like that shower, man. And the guy, Ellie, he was a great friend of mine, but he put a lot of toilet paper in the toilet, and he didn't really wear deodorant that much, so I always smelled the stench of underarms, and I had to get through that. And he was always sweating. He rarely took showers because he woke up late. But I dealt with it. He was a great dude. His hygiene wasn't the best, though. So in conclusion, I would like to say that despite my phone not being charged up because it would not charge and not being comfortable all the time and the hikes being long and uncomfortable, the bonds I made with the Israelis and the new friends I met for life made me comfortable. Okay.
Right.
That's enough, Mr. Apps. No more today.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name's Eric. And to be honest, before our trip to Israel, I was really nervous because, for starters, I had never been out of the country before, so that was a really huge step out of my comfort zone. And also, I really just stuck to my books most of the time. So as a result, books were my comfort zone, and I never focused on communicating with other people too much. And it was kind of for me, that time I tried to play basketball a couple years ago, which didn't really work out. I mean, we don't talk about that. But so when I finally arrived in Israel, I was actually really amazed by the people that I met. And they made it really easy for me to come out of my shell because they were just so nice and so caring. And I just really enjoyed being around them most of the time. And another really important part about being in Israel was all the sights that we got to see, especially a lot of stuff that was on the water because, the country borders the Mediterranean. And I've been interested in large bodies of water for a really long time. So when I got to visit the Jordan River and the Sea of Galilee and the Mediterranean, it was really just a really great experience. But the Dead Sea was probably the coolest body of water that we visited because it was so interesting. We were all really nervous to get into that because, our tour guide, Elon, had told us that if we had cuts on our hand and the water got in, or if water got in our eyes, it would really burn a lot. So that made us all kind of nervous. We were we don't want to deal with that. And but when we finally actually got in, it was really interesting because the water, it doesn't feel like regular water. It feels kind of slick because of the high salt content. And when you're walking in the water, you reach a certain point when the water's like about like here, and it just starts to like make you float even if you're not trying to. And that was just like, I'm used to swimming my heart out most of the time as a swimmer, but it was really cool to just float in some really like clear blue water with some of my closest friends. And it was just a really enjoyable experience, even though I got water in my mouth, which if you ever go to the Dead Sea, do me a favor and don't do that. Yeah, it was just really enjoyable. But when we got back on the bus, our tour guide, Elon, had told us that the Dead Sea was actually shrinking because of climate change and corporations taking out seawater to make products. And I could see this all around me because whenever we went to stores, you would kind of see like a massive label on some stuff that says like, yeah, made from salt that was in the Dead Sea, and I'd be like, oh, okay. But I never really thought about it until that moment. And after I got back from the trip, I had a lot of time to reflect on that experience. And what it made me realize is that the problems that happen in individual nations actually are global problems, and they happen everywhere. And in order to fix these problems, we need to build global connections and make the world more connected to make it better. And since the trip to Israel helped me come out of my shell more, I feel like I can also help make those connections now. And after all that's done, I'll be able to go back to the Dead Sea and float in the nice water that's in a sea that's no longer shrinking.
Hi, everyone. I'm Michaela. I live very close to the Jewish community. Saturdays when I drive down Park Heights, I see Jews and the white and black Orthodox Jews. So when I went to Israel, I honestly thought those were the only kind of Jews. But the Israelis that we were with, they were secular and non-religious, and they weren't just white Jews. I had a teacher who would teach me Hebrew. He was Ethiopian, and there were Jews from Russia, France, and yeah. But he was my teacher, and I would love learning Hebrew. It's an amazing language. And actually, my name in Hebrew is Michaela, and the Israelis would always ask the Americans to say hard Hebrew words because the Americans can't say but as you can see, I have that down pat. But I really, the first time I actually think I saw an Orthodox Jew was when we were in Jerusalem. And that was very surprising to me because I was with regular people like you, but they were Jews. And it was very different because Israel it was a Jewish country, but it was very diverse. It was black Jews, and that was surprising to me. Darn, having a brain freeze. So I was in the market the other day, and I saw a Jewish guy just minding his business and buying groceries. And honestly, I just wanted to walk up to him and ask him about his day and like have a conversation with him. Just because I went to Israel, I think that I'm like Jewish. Like I think I'm an Israeli. Like I think we could just talk about anything. Like I love seeing Jewish people now. And even though I lived in like such close proximity with them, I was ignorant to the whole culture and like to the religion, and I really didn't know much. And being in Israel, I learned so much. Like I'm very defensive of Israelis and Jewish people. I was recently in Barbados, and this guy was telling me about how he worked for the UN and he didn't like the Jewish people and all this everything. And I said, okay, that's your experience, that's not mine. So I really don't care too much because I love the Jews. And it was so mind-opening for me, not only to be single-minded to my religion and the Jewish religion that I learned about, but to explore other religions. So traveling, because I love to travel, I now seek out other religions. I go to a Catholic school, so we study world religion now, and I'm like so excited. I can't wait to find out about the other religions out there. So yeah, thank you.
We landed in Israel. We were met with 12 Israelis, 5 Russians, 3 French, and 4 Ethiopians. And never would I have imagined that all of them would come to mean so much to me. Although they all held a special place in my heart, some of them just took up a little bit more space than others. And one of them was Ecyp. He was a 5'4" Ethiopian boy, but none of the Ethiopians were tall, so it was okay. And he was loud and boisterous and really funny and also caring. Ecyp and Michaela became really good friends, you know what I mean? And so they were in a bit of a squabble. And in a fruitless attempt to make Michaela jealous, so she would apologize first for something she didn't do, he latched on to me. And this conversation, which was at first not real, because he was like, just look at me so Michaela can get mad. And I was like, okay, Ecyp, you do you. It actually ended with me being like really emotional, and I was low-key crying, but that's okay. So in this conversation, we began to talk about life and what he wanted to do after the army. Because in Israel, once you turn 18, everybody has to serve in the army. It doesn't matter if you're a boy or a girl. And so he said he wanted to tour the world because that's what's common to do after you leave the army. And he said that his first stop on his world tour was the US. And I asked him, once you get here, who would you want to stay with? And he told me how he would want to spend the night in everybody's house because he loves us so much and he got along with everybody. And I told him how after college, I also wanted to travel the world. And I told him I would make sure I come back to Israel because I consider Israel one of like a second home to me. And he told me how I would never have to get a hotel or find somewhere to go because he would always have a home with me and that with him. And that resonated really well with me because it just opened my eyes. It doesn't matter what religion you worship, where you're from, what you do, you can make a family from anybody. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Gabriella. So before we went to Israel, like Afia, everyone was really building it up for us and telling us how amazing it is and how beautiful and how it's going to be the best experience of our whole lives. So we're really excited. I have high expectations. So we get on the plane, and we touch down, and we're looking for the little Ecyp, like the people dressed in black holding it. I was so excited because I've never had that before. So I'm looking, and I see this big group with Welcome to Israel signs, and they're all cheering. And on our plane, there was other kids there for other programs. So I was like, that's not for us. So we're walking, and they're looking at me, and I'm like, okay, I don't really know who you are. And they're like, hi, and I'm like, hello. And they said, are you from Baltimore? I said, yeah, we're from Baltimore. And they said, we're Yemen Ord. Yes, we're coming. So I was like, okay, already I have to be honest here, I was starting to judge them. I looked at them and I was like, this is not what I was expecting at all, but yeah, I have to go with it. So we went to outside where the autobus, that's what we call it, was parked, and we start eating, and we're outside of the bus, and we're talking, and we're looking at each other, trying to figure out each other, and I was already judging. My counselor, Gal, who's mentioned a couple times, he's about this tall, and he looks like the stereotypical Jewish person with the black curly hair, and he's wearing the Jesus sandals, and he looked kind of goofy. And I start judging the kids. So we get on the bus, and we start driving Yemen Ord. And already the Americans and Israelis were separated on the bus, and I knew we should have been interacting with each other. I was like, I don't care. We're having a great time. Us American girls were laughing our heads off. We were having a great time, and we were on our phones. And Gal walks over and says, Gabby, get off your phone. You're in Israel. Look, it's beautiful. Don't be on your phone. I was like, oh my God, I've just been on a plane for 10 hours. Let me check my phone. But, I put it away, and I was like, okay. So I was looking outside, and I was like, it's not that pretty. There's dirt everywhere, on the ground, on cars, on our bus. I mean, as soon as we stepped off the bus, we already had dirt up to our knees, and it was on our suitcases. And you see concrete buildings with clothes hanging out of the windows. It was I don't know where we were, but we get to Yemen Ord, and we pull up, and everyone's like, oh my God, it's so pretty. You can see the ocean. I was like, where? I don't see it. And they're like, there's flowers and everything. And I was like, okay, we have flowers in America. I don't see the big deal here. And we get to the synagogue where we're having our meeting, where we're all centered, and it's 4th of July. And they're like, here, we have cake for you, and we're eating. we finished, and it's time to clean up. And all the Israelis just got up and went outside. And we're like, what are they doing? Like, it's time to clean up. And there's like watermelon on the tables and drinks spilled over on the floor. And we're like, what? Did you guys like not been taught to clean? And we run out to look outside. What are they doing? They're all smoking. We're like, this is so weird. But after a while, we started doing some icebreakers to get to know each other, and I started getting into it. And later, we were forced to do a scavenger hunt. And Michaela, Cam, and me were in a group, and I was like forced to talk to them. But I ended up having a great time and finding out that they were awesome people and they were so funny, and that I didn't care about the dirt anymore. I was like, this is great. Like, I'm gonna roll around in it. I loved it so much by the end. I miss that dirt. But so by it wasn't throughout the program, or throughout the 3 weeks, I started finding out the country's beautiful and there's greenery everywhere, and the concrete buildings that were ugly before are so awesome. You need it because it's hot there. You can't have the carpets and the brick. And so at the end, the last morning there, Afia, Dominique, and Nadra and I were having a conversation, and we were talking about our time in Israel. And I remember we started talking about our first day there, and I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, I can't believe I remember talking about the dirt and how the people were weird. And I don't know why I was judging about, because throughout the 3.5 weeks, I found out that the country is actually beautiful, not just appearance-wise, but finding out what it is as a country and who these people are deep down. I start to get to know them, and they've become my best friends. We all miss them so much. That they're genuine people, and they care about us, and that we care about them, and I created such a great bond, and that the country is so layered and has all these things to it. And I can't believe I judged it. And even though all these years, they tell you don't judge a book by its cover, I did that. And I couldn't believe I did that. And after this experience, I know, definitely I will never judge a book by its cover ever again. Thank you.
During our journey to Israel, I had the opportunity of taking a hike the first week that we were there. And I hate nature. I knew I hated nature, but this was mandatory, so I was like, I need to get my life together and just take this hike like everybody else. And the reason I hate nature is because you can't control it. If something happens, it happens, and you just have to dust yourself off and grit on with your day. And so 5 minutes into this hike, I slipped on the biggest rock I have ever seen in my entire life, and I just laid there because I had fell, and I just laid there because I was like, I need to regroup. I can't just pop up from this, it hurts. It's just not okay. And so Danielle, who was our camp counselor, she gets me up and she says, it's okay, it's okay. She dusts me off, and we continue to take the hike. And then 5 more minutes into the hike, I just get attacked by some of the biggest insects I've ever seen. I did not know what they were. I was like, is this some kind of miniature bird trying to come at me? I don't know what this is. And so I was like, I have off on. She's like, oh no, I don't think that works here. I was like, but this is all I have. It has to work. And so she was like, oh well, you'll just have to tough it out. And so me and Danielle had taken a break, and into that break we had this conversation. And I was like, I don't even know why I tried to break the fall. If I just would have fell, it wouldn't have hurt as bad. And I was like, that's kind of deep. But I was still feeling the pain, so I didn't really pay attention to it at the time. And so we go off and we begin to camp. And so in the beginning, our camp counselor, Gal, he was kind of messing with me. He was like, oh, the hike's only 20 minutes. But I believed him because I was being extremely optimistic. So I was like, oh, yeah, okay, cool. It's only a 20-minute hike. But I go to Slavo, who is the person who's taking us on the hike. He's like, oh, no, he was joking. This might be a 3-hour hike. And I was like, that's not funny, though. Nobody's laughing. and so we get to, we end the hike. And I explained to Danielle, why I hate nature. And she says, well, if you're going to be in Israel for 3.5 weeks, you're going to have to learn to, not be so controlling and just take things as they are, because you never know where it will lead you. And so ever since then, I've just been so open to things that I cannot control, because before Israel, I just really thought I had it all planned out. I was going to go to Israel. I was going to have this great epiphany that Afia was talking about. And I was going to come back from Israel. I was going to start applying to college. Everything was going to be great. I had it planned out. And I just realized that the greatest things that can happen to you are the things that are unexpected and the things you can't control. Because that is when you're in your prime, when you have no control and when the only thing that can affect you is your surroundings. And that's the only way that you can learn sometimes. And at the end of that week, we took a trip. And so on this trip, I had no idea where we were going. And I had this awful habit of always asking the driver, so where are we going? And I had the same habit of doing that back at home. And my dad would always tell me, just enjoy the ride, just enjoy the journey. You'll see where we're going when we get there. And that was just something that I really had to decide to do. I had to decide to enjoy the journey and stop trying to break the fall. Because when I think about it, I was just grabbing for things to break my fall so that it wouldn't hurt as bad. But if I just would not have grabbed on stuff enough, I would have just fell and got back up. It would have just been so much easier, and it just would have been, not as bad. And at the end of the day, coming back from Israel, coming back from meeting such amazing people, the biggest thing that they left me with is just enjoy the journey and don't try to break the fall. Thank you.
All right. Okay. My name's Dennis. I just want to tell you guys what type of person I am before I start. So I'm a person that I'm very busy. Like, I have extracurricular activities and I have sports and I have to stay on top of my academics. So I'm a scheduled guy. Like, I hardly have time to go out and like do something that's just spontaneous, where my friend just texted me and he's like, hey, you want to go to the movies? I'm like, no, I can't. I don't have time. So when we go to Israel, I'm like, they're going to give us our itinerary. And I was like, all right, so I got the schedule. I got what we're going to do. I know what we're going to do every day. So we go, and this is like, the first experience that started to break this trend was like a week and a half into the trip. So we go kayaking in the Jordan River, and it's me, Eric, Troy. It was supposed to be David, but David had got scuffled off to another group. And this Israeli Russian named Daniel. So we get pushed in, and the guy, before we get pushed in, he's like, do not go swim in the Jordan River. But he sort of said it like it was just something he had to say, and he kind of knew that we were going to do it anyway. So I go in there, and I'm like, okay, I can't swim in the Jordan River. I'm going to just kayak, and we're going to get this done. So it was me and my friends, and Daniel. So we go in, and our first thing is we go right into the mud bank, and then Daniel's like, just to hype up the moment, he's like, there are snakes in the trees. We got to get away from this. And everybody in there just started panicking. And I got the row, so I'm like pushing it away from the bank. So we're going down, and Daniel's like, okay, it's time to jump in the river. And I'm like, but he said don't jump in the river. And he's like, it doesn't matter. And he jumps in, and then I sit there for a second. I was like, should I jump in or shouldn't I jump in? And I was like, I gotta do it. And I just jump in, and Troy and Eric are like, they told you don't go in. And I'm like, I'm already in now, so let's take it from here. So it started to turn into like a race of who could get finished first. So we're going, and we're trying to slow other people's, I guess you can say, watercrafts down. So we're halfway down, and I get back in the raft because I had been in the water at this point about 10 minutes. And so we're rowing down, and we take another raft, take two of their rows. So we're going, and then he's like, let's go in again. And I'm like, but the guy's right there, and he's looking at us. And he's like, let's just go in again. So we go in again, and then we get out at the end. And this is when I had my sort of moment, or I guess you can say epiphany. I was like, wow, if I take out moments in my schedule, or like take just when stuff comes up spontaneous and I just go and do it, maybe this stuff can be fun. It can change my sort of, I guess you can say, view. So that happened, and about a week later, this Israeli named Yanni, and this man is like, I guess you can say he's a little brother to me. Well, he's like a figurative, how I would say. So I say, here, Yanni, here's 5 shekels. Can you please go get me a Coke? And he's like, you want a Coke? I was like, yes, Yanni, please get me a Coke. And he goes to the vending machine, and he gets me a Schweppes. It was like a raspberry Schweppes. And I look at this man, and I'm like, Yanni, what have you done? And he gives it to me, and he's like, try it. I'm like, okay, I'm going to try it. And then I tasted it, and I was like, this is actually really, really good. So then the vending machine is in Hebrew, and I take Hebrew in my school, so I know a little bit, but I couldn't read anything on there. So every day I'd take my 5 shekels, put it in the machine, and just hit a random button. And the best thing happened. I found my favorite drink there, and it's called like mango nectar, and I got that every single day after that. So that happened, and when I'm on the plane, I'm just thinking to myself, because I was spontaneous and because I took and did things that I usually wouldn't do, it enhanced my my trip, my views. It helped me to, as Troy would say, evolve, and that was my thing from Israel, and yeah, that's it.
My story takes place in the Negev desert. When we first went out there, I was like, oh, okay. It's just a desert, It's pretty empty, not really full of anything. Though later, I realized it's full of a lot of lessons I'm really glad to have learned, just from being out there. So originally, I didn't really want to be out there, but it was a part of an activity. One of the infamous activities that our counselors had us do. Did about 1 million activities on this trip, and this one was for us to go out into the desert by ourselves and separate by ourselves in the different spots and just lay up, look at the sky, and just think and be alone with ourselves. So, I'm a team player. That's the type of guy I am. So that's what I do. Go head out in the desert, and I lay down, and I start thinking, but what am I going to think about? So random thoughts start coming to me. I'm like, could go for falafel right now. I could be in my tent sleeping right now. I could be doing a lot of stuff. But then I start thinking a little deeper, start thinking about life, start thinking about how crazy life is. It's crazy the fact that I'm in Israel right now with these 11 other people, I call them friends. I think you guys, it'd be cool. I called you guys my friends. Y'all see, I made some friends. It's pretty cool. So, I'm out here in Israel with my friends just doing our thing. It's crazy. But then I start thinking even deeper. And I start thinking about stuff like the universe and just how random everything is and how random life is and the fact that I'm in Israel, the fact that any of this is going on. And I really started thinking, if everything's so random, then did anything really have a purpose or a point to it? And that's really when that hit me. I kind of had to stop thinking for a sec. Because think about it. It's a brief existential crisis in a totally different country. Where are you supposed to go when that's happening, So you just got to lay down and think it through. I keep thinking it through, though. And I think all these things that we have going on around us happen because people gave it purpose. I'm going to pull a Cummins on this one. Wait a minute. Think about that. Everything that happens now that has a purpose is because somebody gave it purpose. Now, you think about the greats in the world. You think about the great athletes, the great scientists, everybody that has achieved new things and great records and broken records and all this. And you think, did anybody think this was possible before they did it? I mean, if everybody thought it was possible, it would have been done, right? But then apply this to yourself. For some of our more astute, that wasn't the word I was looking for, our academically intensive audience members, think about that A+ on that paper that you've been working on all year. Think about it. Think about how much work you put into that because you saw the importance in it. For some of our guys out there or some of our girls out there who looked at that special guy, that special gal, I know our married couples out here, they can look around, look to the person next to you, think, wow, how much work did I put into this, making this happen? This is wild. This is wild. But really, all that to say, literally anything is possible if you put your mind to it. And when I thought about this, like you hear everybody say it, but when you really think it through, it's a lot deeper than it seems on the surface. When I thought about this, a sense of peace went through me. I took a deep breath, and I opened my eyes and looked around the desert. I gotta say, the desert seemed a lot fuller now.
I am absolutely proud of them. Sorry. This is my first group, and I also got a chance to see them in Israel and see their experience, and I'm so proud of them for sharing their story. Now I'm going to bring up Congressman Cummings to share some remarks.
Good evening, everyone. Come on, we can do better than that. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. It is certainly my honor and my privilege to be here, and I want to start off by thanking Dina for coming back. When I saw you, I could not help but think about my second grade teacher, whose name was Estelle Jackson. And in the little 9-room elementary school that we had, she always told us that she would come back because she was leaving the year that I went to the 3rd grade, but she never came back. And here it is, almost 50-some years later, and I still feel the pain and the disappointment of her not coming back. And so I thank you for coming. Give her a hand, Dina. Thank you. Thank you. To Kathleen, to our board, to the parents, and to our students, I wouldn't have missed this. Today, I rushed back from Washington. I'm the only member now of Congress who has reviewed the FBI files of Hillary Clinton as part of my responsibilities in Congress. But I wanted to come back and make sure that I got here for this. As I was listening to our students, I could not help but think about my father. And Reverend Leah White, who has a grandchild that came through the program, knows this song so well. My father, who only had a 4th grade education, did not even see a toilet until he was 19 years old. He used to have a song that he sung, and they sung it at his funeral. And it was his favorite song. And it simply goes, "This is my story. This is my song, praising my Savior all the day long." And as I listened to the stories of our children, it hit me, Aya, that this is their story. This is their story. I've said it many times that I think the most important things adults can do is create positive memories in the minds of children and to help them discover what their gifts are and then help nurture their gifts so they can deliver their gifts to the world. That's what we're supposed to do. And that's what this program is all about. And so to our children, I'm so glad that you had this opportunity. But as I've told you many times, that, a lot of times people think that things happen by accident. I don't believe that. I believe that everything happens for a reason. I believe that you were meant to be a part of this. This was meant to be a part of your destiny. And I thank my board, because my board realizes that the things that we are doing, we mean to touch your future until you die. We may not be here to see the fulfillment of your dreams, but we want to know that we have invested in you. And so we take this very seriously. And last night, I just so happened to be reading a piece in the Jerusalem Post. And I just want to share this with you because our young people, this is what you're up against. This is why we want you to absorb everything that you have learned to be peacemakers and change agents. It says the viciousness of the U.S. presidential campaign has let loose open expressions of Jew hatred across the political spectrum. On the right, white supremacists have taken to social media to attack Jewish columnists who dare to criticize GOP nominee Donald Trump. They say that critics should be sent to the gas chambers. The fact that Hitler didn't finish, they hate the fact that Hitler didn't finish the job. They want, and on the left, demonstrators a call for banishing Zionist pigs from the Middle East. At a rally outside the Democratic National Convention in Philadelphia last week, protesters torched an Israeli flag, presumably to show their anger at Hillary Clinton's victory over Bernie Sanders, a Jew. The irony would be sweet if it weren't so tragic. Already Jews on U.S. University campuses are being targeted. Jewish students are harassed and taunted more than any other minority group. Americans should not forget that Jews are always the canary in the coal mine, the first to be attacked, but not the last. Indeed, U.S. flags were burned out alongside Israeli flags in Philadelphia. Left and right-wing extremists are a marriage made in hell, producing the satanic progeny that, if not kept in check, will destroy the very fabric of the free society that has enabled anti-Semitism to rear its ugly head. That was from the Jerusalem Post. The reason why I brought that up, I usually don't read articles like this in speeches, but it kind of touched me that as we young people believe so strongly that Black lives matter just as much as anybody else's, we have to understand that we're not the only ones that go through difficulties and problems, that there are other people who are experiencing pain. And I think there's no greater thing that we can do than to help people come together and try to understand each other and appreciate each other, talk to each other, and then become allies against forces of evil. Yesterday, I had the privilege, it was Monday, when was the bris? Monday? To go to a bris. I had never been to a bris. Some of y'all figured out what that is later. But Judge Freeman's first grandchild was being circumcised. And so I went to the bris, and it was 9 o'clock in the morning on a Monday, right? Monday. That's a tough time to go to anything for me. But you know what? I couldn't leave. I didn't want to leave. You know why? Because as I watched and listened to the ceremony, Hofberger, I realized that I was hungering for tradition, hungering for rituals, hungering for things that connected people from generation to generation. And somebody, one of our children, just stood up and talked about the significance of names. To hear the father of the baby and the grandfather stand up and talk about the significance of the name and how they wanted to make sure that their children, that this young boy, the grandchild, would become like his grandparents and have the same kind of characteristics. So one thing being taken from generation to generation. So I say all that to say this. We don't want you to just, we didn't want you to just have a good time. We wanted you to have a good time, but more importantly, we wanted you to think big. My father, with his limited education, used to always say that if small's got you, big can't get you. When we think small and we think negativity all the time, when we're approaching people in a way that does not uplift them, then I think it makes us look smaller. And so I want to thank our children for what you have done for us. You don't fully understand it, but you, and again, in the words of my father, you'll understand it by and by. You have allowed us to feed our souls. It makes our board happy to know that we are putting our fingerprints on your lives. It makes us feel good to know that no matter where you go or what you do, you will be touched by the things we did. And you know, if you really think about it, if you think about life and you think about death and you think about legacy, what better thing can you have than to have known that you made somebody's life better? Hofberger's, I guess it's your father, started the program, the baseball program. Was that your father? Hofberger's father started a program years ago where they gave inner city kids, I guess mainly inner city kids, an opportunity to go to a baseball game. They give you a hot dog and a soda. And the only baseball game I went to in my life before I was 23 was when I was 10, 11 years old because of that program. And I didn't even know it, Haya, until we had the fundraiser and you mentioned your father. And so, and that had a profound impact on my life. And my last thing to our children would be this. Remember how you felt with regard to having this opportunity. And we ask that you turn around and try to give somebody else, some little child who's simply trying to find their way. Maybe be a cousin, maybe a friend, maybe a little nephew, whoever. But try to give them opportunities so that they can be lifted up and make a difference in the world. I tell everybody that works for me, everybody, I've got now about a total of 100 people between the Benghazi Committee, the Oversight Committee, and my personal staff. But I tell every one of them, if you are not better when you leave me, then I have failed. If you're not a stronger person, a better person, a more compassionate person, then I failed. And I know the board, I know I speak for the board, we feel the same way. I know Kathleen feels the same way. Saville feels the same way. And Dina, the reason why she came back here, this was her class. They came in with you, right? Because it's a part of who she is. And she knows that her fingerprints are going to be on your lives. So I want to thank you for being great travelers. I want to thank you for touching us. We are grateful that we have been a part of your destiny, but more significantly, we thank you over the fact that you've been a part of ours. Thank you.